The Swamp Buster rule is a provision in the '85 Farm Bill that promotes conservation, but is often called government overreach. Here in a partnership with Detroit PBS is the story of one landowner who challenged Swamp Buster and the farmers who rallied against that challenge.
John Gilbert is a fourth-generation farmer. He and his brother Greg raise hogs, beef cattle, and soybeans on 800 acres of land in Hardin County, Iowa.
In this era, when we have virtual this and virtual that and virtual just about everything, the land is probably one of the realest things we have. And it is really something we need to be cherishing because, quite frankly, all life on Earth depends on how well we look after our soils.
Nearly 120 miles to the east, Steve Besler and his wife Ellie Gadent own a farm near Worthington, Iowa.
I grew up on my family's farm, about 20 miles southeast of here.
It's something I've always loved. My first task as a kid was to pick eggs. And from there, we went to bottle feeding calves. We dairy farmed and raised hogs growing up. Farming's been in my blood, and it's thick as can be. So there's no getting the farming out of me.
It's safe to say that for Steve, Ellie, and the Gilbert brothers, farming is a way of life. But there's a pending court case that could impact their way of life by stripping away what many environmentalists consider to be the last guardrail against the destruction of precious wetlands. The case is CTM Holdings, LLC versus USDA, and the guardrail is a provision in the U.S. Farm Bill called Swamp Buster. Katie Garvey is an attorney with the Environmental Law and Policy Center in Chicago. She's intervening in this case, representing Iowa farmers.
I don't have any reason to doubt that the plaintiff feels genuinely and subjectively aggrieved that he's not allowed to do whatever he wants with his land and get free money from the government. But that is not a legally cognizable injury. We might call that feelings, we might call that opinions, we might call that entitlement. It's not a legal injury.
Jim Conlon, a hedge fund manager in suburban Chicago, is challenging Swamp Buster by suing the federal government. His investment firm, CTM Holdings, owns more than 1,000 acres of farmland in Iowa. The land at the center of this court case is a 72-acre parcel near the small town of Delaware, Iowa, population 140, which Conlon rents out to a local farmer. About 9 acres of that land are considered wetlands. Under the Swamp Buster provision, the USDA pays Conlon in the form of subsidies for not plowing those 9 acres. Conlon argues that the Swamp Buster provision is unconstitutional.
And the reason I say that is because the federal government prohibits it from being used for anything that has any economic value at all. You can't farm it, you can't build on it, you can't clear it, take the stumps out of it, and the underlying land is probably worth $20,000 an acre. If you could, it's worth zero. It's actually worth less than zero.
But Swamp Buster is purely voluntary. So why doesn't Conlon just opt out of the program?
You couldn't participate in any of those programs. That would make it difficult for a farmer to rent that land because the federal government's involvement in agriculture is pervasive. It's difficult for a farmer, a renter, for example, to operate without USDA supports.
Conlon maintains that the 9 acres of wetlands on his property are not always wet and are not connected to any other body of water.
I've never met an actual real farmer that has anything good to say about the wetland laws and regulations. They despise them. I don't know who the hobby farmers are that are near there or what environmental groups they're part of. But if you interviewed 100 farmers in Iowa of various sizes, I don't think you could find one out of that typical 100 that would share that view.
Gilbert and other farmers are concerned about increased flooding on their farms if Conlon wins and Swamp Buster is overturned. Wetlands slow water down, storing floodwater and preventing it from inundating farms, homes, and riverfront towns further downstream. That's why Steve and Ellie are concerned.
We're downstream from the land in question in this lawsuit. We're about 12 miles southeast of this wetlands in question. And this is far greater than one stream and one wetland in Iowa. This directly comes down and affects us and affects our neighbors.
A recent study conducted by the Union of Concerned Scientists found that 30 million acres of wetlands in the upper Midwest, including the Great Lakes region, provide nearly $23 billion in annual flood mitigation for homeowners. Over the long term, the study estimates that protecting these wetlands could prevent between $323 billion and more than $700 billion in residential flood damages in the upper Midwest. But for Conlon, this case comes down to the rights of landowners.
I'm pro-environment. I'm pro-collective action, but I'm also pro-property rights, which is if you're going to take from me for the benefit of society generally, including me, you have to pay me.
For the farmers fighting to keep Swamp Buster, the lawsuit hits closer to home.
Those of us who work the land, we leave footprints and shadows on the land. You know, the ethic we have, the relationship we have with the land is totally foreign to a lot of the outside people who are coming in and basically prostituting the land.
On May 29, 2025, a federal judge ruled against CTM Holdings. CTM said they planned to appeal, but no appeal was filed before the July 28th deadline.
A complex issue sure to be tested in court again.